What's the most horrible thing you have done as a kid, without realizing how bad it was until you grew up? Story 1, when I was really little, like 3 or so, I knew two things were bad: being naked and flipping the. After every bath before my parents could dry me off, I would run full speed through the house naked with both middle fingers flying. I'm such a square now. Story 2, when I was about 9, I was playing with matches in an open field, and the field caught fire. 2 nearby houses burnt down. Nobody was hurt, thank God. I just hid in my room and heard sirens screaming and everything. When the neighbors and mom started talking about what a tragedy, all I could do was nod and agree with focused emphasis. Edit for those people who have accused me of burning down their houses. This incident occurred in 1969. The statute of limitations passed a long, long time ago. Story 3, I used to call my grandma Grams, which I then changed to grams of fat hearing that phrase on TV. I never saw how that could have been offensive until a few years later. Story 4, my cat scratched me, so I punished it by locking it in my bedroom drawer all day, just like my mom grounded me to my room if I was naughty. Realized a few years later that it wasn't quite the same. The cat was fine BTW. Story 5, when I was in 2nd grade. My school employed a buddy program where they paired younger children with the bigger kids so that everyone could learn trust and responsibility, or some, I don't know. I was paired with a 6th grader named Gretchen, and we got along fine. So fine, in fact, she invited me to play tag with her friends after school one day. Me, a 2nd grader, playing tag with 6th graders, I had really arrived in the world, but I was anxious that the big kids would view me as a child rather than a peer, and so, hopped up on social interaction and the high of feeling accepted by your betters, I decided to be cool. I am not cool. Gretchen's best friend was a stockily built girl named Lauren. Lauren got tagged. I saw my chance to make an edgy joke and screamed out, "The fat girl is it?" Everyone stopped running and looked at me. Lauren got red in the face and sat down. Gretchen walked solemnly over and explained to me, slowly and carefully, that I had said a very cruel thing, and that if I couldn't act like an adult, I should go sit on the slide. At the time, I couldn't understand my mistake. I never really thought Lauren was fat, so why should she be upset? When I became a chunky, insecure 6th grade girl, I finally got it. Story 6, the worst thing I ever done. I mixed a pot of fake puke at home, and then I went to this movie theater, hid the puke in my jacket, climbed up to the balcony, and then I made a noise like this hua, and then I dumped it over the side, all over the people in the audience. And then, this was horrible, all the people started getting sick and throwing up all over each other. I never felt so bad in my entire life. Story 7, I had this dog when I was younger. She was my absolute best friend. I was that kind of kid who hung out with her dog all the time. We had adventures together. We traveled to mysterious places in our backyard together. We even spooned and slept on the living room floor. So when I was around 5 to 7 years old, I took this bonding thing a little too far. And not like that before anyone supposes something. We kept her as an indoor-outdoor dog. She would use newspaper to go to the bathroom when she was inside. I began to want to bond with her so much I would, and on the newspaper with her. I loved her and wanted to see the world through her eyes. So after months of this, my grandmother one day asked me about it. She was living with us at the time and asked me essentially if I was shitting, and alongside our dog, I lied and said no. However, I then in that moment realized my grandmother was the one responsible for picking up said newspapers. Only now do I realize I allowed my grandmother to pick up my dogs and my number 1s and number 2s for months upon months. Story 8, when in 7th grade, I passed by my high school and saw a letter in my box. I see that it's addressed to my geography teacher, and it looks personal because his name is handwritten. Stupid me took it home, read it, and then threw it away. It seemed to be from a long-lost loves that wanted to rekindle whatever had happened in their past. So for no good reason, there's a chance that I changed this man's life, robbing him of a potential lover. 12 years later, I still kick myself about it. Story 9, when I was in elementary school, a kid in my class started hitting me with his jacket. So I took it away from him, threw it on the ground, and said, "Stop hitting me, you freak." I was then sent to the principal's office where I was suspended for 3 days. When I got back, I beat the out of this kid and got suspended again. Multiple years later, I realized the reason I got into trouble for calling him a freak was because he was retarded, so I beat the out of a retarded kid. Story 10, once when I was 7, my family went for dinner at another family's house. At dinner, I was told to sit next to a child who was in a wheelchair, and I asked why I had to have the broken one whilst my other siblings all got to sit next to kids who were perfectly healthy. My 7-year-old self did not quite understand exactly how terrible the comment was. Luckily, I think the host family just explained what was wrong with their child in a way that I could understand. I think in the end, we became quite good friends for about 4 hours until we had to leave. Story 11, I used to pick on a neighbor when I was about 4 years old. All he wanted to do was play with me, and I was just mean to him. One time I got a garden hose and started spraying him. When his grandmother came to take him away, I sprayed her as well. Oh man, I was such a little snot edit wonderful. My highest rated comment is about me being a total turd juggler when I was a kid. Thanks, Reddit. Story 12. When I was about 8, I saw my friend's dad kissing my other friend's mom. My friend's dad was married. I asked my friend why her dad was always at my other friend's house. She asked her mom the same question. They got a divorce. Story 13. My sister was diagnosed with cancer, and we used to go to the hospital every day to see her. I was young and didn't fully understand the concept of cancer and what could happen. She ended up losing her leg and came to stay at the house to visit. I was with a friend and wanted to go to his house, but my parents wouldn't let me, and I got mad. I hate talking about this, but I started making fun of her. The chemo had made her lose all her hair, so I called her a bald-headed biscuit. She ended up passing away not soon after. To this day, I regret it and pray every day that she was here, so I could apologize. I love you, sis. I'm sorry. Story 14. I used to throw everything at the cars without being caught with my friends. I was quite of and I regret a lot of things I've done during my childhood. Story 15. When I was 8, I played with the neighbors who were 16 and 17. The older boy antagonized me during our Super Soaker fight to the point where rocks were being thrown. I don't remember what drove me to throw handfuls of rocks aimlessly, but the neighbor stood there tossing one at a time accurately. Eventually, he hit me straight in the dome, and I ran home crying. This part is blurry. I walk into the bathroom crying, plotting my revenge, unzip my pants, and fill up my Super Soaker with all the fury I had in my tiny unit. I walk outside with a mix of rage and confidence, thinking I'm going to blast this and get him back for what he's done to me. Meanwhile, he is getting scolded by his parents, and at an attempt of good faith, he sees me with my water gun and walks outside with his mouth gaping open to accept my revenge. I in his mouth by a Super Soaker, the priceless look of realization, and the words he'll never forget. P. He shot me with P. I ran home and hid. Story 16. There was an elderly man at church named Rudy. I was just a 5-year-old when I knew him, and I was very shy as a little girl. Rudy always wanted to give me a hug when he saw me, but in general I never allowed that from anyone but my mom or my dad. At first I tried dodging him, then I'd run through his arms every single time. When he tried to hug me, all I wanted to do was escape the clutches of a person I didn't know well enough to hug. He made a joke about it, and would then try to hug me as a joke each time, making it really easy for me to run through his arms. It became a game of failed catch, I suppose. I wish I had hugged him. He was a sweet, sweet man, and I hate that I dodged him intentionally. Story 17. When I was in 5th or 6th grade, I had a dirty dream about a girl in class I had a crush on. Long story short, I told a friend of mine who then proceeded to tell the whole class. It was embarrassing as another kid in class, a bit of an outcast, tried to comfort me by telling me that he had with his stepbrother, who I think was a teenager at that point. I took that information and told it to the class in the hopes that it diverted attention from me. I knew it was bad pretty shortly after that and have felt horrible ever since. Story 18. I begged my mom to pay for acting classes so I could be the next Disney Channel star. She, a young single mother in medical school, paid $4,000 for the classes. After 1 month, I start complaining and decide I don't want to go to the next 2 months of classes. I really wish I could slap my bratty 11-year-old self and tell her to be more grateful for everything her mother sacrifices for her. Also, it probably would have been nice for my mom to get 3 hours to herself a week. Story 19. Fruit Nation. In middle school, my friends and I would save all of our fruit until it was time to leave lunch. Then, as the stampede rushed past, we would drop all of our fruit on the ground where it would be smashed and smeared everywhere. This went on for months. We were never caught. Those poor janitors. Story 20. Once I played in the drawer of my parents' razors in their bathroom. My mom walked in and found my hands covered in blood. Also in preschool, I had a dream that one of my friends punched my on picture day, and the day after I came home and told my mom this. She contacted the school, and we had to sit down with the principal and my friend and our moms. My friend kept denying he hit me, but I insisted. During this meeting, I realized it was a dream, but I never said anything. Story 21. Smashed 20 grand worth of my grandmother's jewelry with a hammer after hearing on TV that diamonds were the hardest thing on earth. I always was one for experimentation. Story 22. I put a nail in the middle of the road because I thought cars should be on one side or the other. I sat there and watched it for an hour. Some guy in a company truck popped his tire on it, and then I went inside. Story 23. Rather tame, but I named my snake Herpes. I was thinking herpetology, snakes, herpes. Of course, my parents let me keep the name, and I took him around while being very proud of myself. And then this came up the first time I brought someone home for a date. Story 24. I'm the one that stole your foil Charizard. John, edit, I never did this. I just wanted to surprise a few people named John who had Charizard stolen. Story 25, we used to make fun of a kid in my grade school who smelled and was held back a couple years. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just different. Feels terrible now. Ran into him a few years back, and he was a friendly, good guy, although he never did well in school. He picked up a trade, and he's a mechanic now. Story 26, when I was in either kindergarten or first grade, I touched a kid's penis on the bus in exchange for his Spider-Man gummies. I was hungry, and those were some good gummies. Story 27, there was a girl in my middle school that was really very slow. All the other children made fun of her and picked on her. She was snippy to us, but only because of how we treated her. Anyway, she was in an after-school program with me and my friends. I built these things out of necks that would fire little pieces. One of my friends suggested we shoot them at her, so we did. She ran home crying. If there is one thing I wish I could apologize for, it is that I should have known better, and I should have stood up to my friends. Edit, I tried to find her on Facebook before. Either she doesn't have one, or she has her security set, so I cannot find her without mutual friends. Trust me, I really, really wish I could find her. Story 28, when I was in the third grade. There was this kid with autism who loved to play tag. He couldn't say anything other than tag. Everything else was little groaning sounds like muh. One day, me and several other kids were playing tag with him, and he ran up the jungle gym to try to not get tagged. He ended up going over the bars to face down, as one of the other kids slowly moved up to tag him, and I was on the ground waiting to tag him. The kid was clearly scared now, as he didn't want to get tagged, but he didn't want to jump down either, and so he started freaking out. Luckily, one of the security guard faculty members who watches the kids came over and shooed us away, so he could get down safely. The jungle gym isn't that tall, it's like 6 feet in height, but I felt like years later remembering it, since I kind of enjoyed him getting frightened. Even now remembering it, I feel like I really wish I still knew the kid so I could try apologizing to him or his family. Used to play chicken with traffic, as in wait till the cars got as close as I dared, then I ran over the street. Story 29, I was mad at my sisters one day and decided to cardboard to death 97's sister is stupid on the windowsill in our shared bedroom. To ease suspicion, I also cardboard to death 97 is stupid onto the windowsill. It is still there to this day. Story 30, as a kid my mother would always make me elaborate and substantial lunches to take to school and would even throw in additional food at my request. I realized the potential of this and decided to request as much extra food as I could get, not realizing how early my mom had to get up to make 2 PBJ sandwiches of ham or a turkey sandwich pair and apple slices with peanut butter dip 2 to 3 bags of chips candy dessert, sometimes homemade cake, cheese sticks, gummies, fruit roll-ups, etc. Now, what was I doing with all this food? I was using it as a means to bribe other children to do assignments for me, i.e., on my behalf to keep from getting caught, and to pay for high-risk services. These high-risk services revolve around my network of paid thieves who would steal hundreds of Pokemon and later Yu-Gi-Oh card from the wealthy kids, or those who bragged too much about their ultra-rare card, which were conveniently ultra-underprotected. Those who I paid for this service were primarily kids interested in card games, and thus less likely to be subject to investigation. I amassed ridiculous amounts of cards which I sold for money to card shops, or back to wealthy kids who were victims of my group. My newly found wealth was used to buy my PS2, my GameCube, my Xbox Original, as well pay for school lunches of things I wanted, but my mom either could not pack into a lunch or would not make. While I had the school in my grip, I even began paying older kids for protection and even to beat up kids who picked on me. My group lasted 6 years, and I was never caught. To this day, I feel like for abusing my mom's caring heart and always try to both make her something by hand and buy her something very nice for Mother's Day. TLDR made my mom work harder than necessary to fund an organized trading card theft ring and regret it. Story 31, I called other kids in my 5th grade class, some of whom were black, the N-word. I heard it from some crazy lady on the bus and asked my mom what it meant. She told me it meant stupid. At this time of my life, I wasn't allowed to call people stupid, so I was fond of finding synonyms that I was allowed to say. For example, one of my favorites was calling people STUART and meaning that they were STUPID. I was not a bright child. The next day at school, I began calling everybody stupid via the N-word. At one point, I called my friend, who happened to be black, the N-word. She knew what it meant and got really offended. I didn't understand why because I had called her Stuart before, and she didn't react this way. So she tried to explain, but I just couldn't believe that there were words meant to hurt a specific group of people. I literally had never been cognizant of that kind of hurtfulness before. So I argued with her. We argued about its meaning for a while with me, saying it meant Stuart stupid, and with her saying it means you hate black people. It got heated enough that I raised my hand and asked our teacher what it meant. That's right, in the middle of class, I asked my teacher what the N-word meant. I asked my black 5th grade teacher, Ms. Wilson, what the N-word meant. And the weirdest thing is that she understood the situation immediately. She knew that I had no real clue about its true meaning and that I wasn't using it in a racist context. So you know what happened? I won the argument. Ms. Wilson told me that it just meant stupid and to talk to her after class. I don't know what the greater injustice was, me calling my classmates the N-word or me winning an argument about its meaning with my black friend when I was so in the wrong. After class, Ms. Wilson questioned me about where I heard that word in an effort to determine if my family was a bunch of racists they aren't. And then she told me to never use that word because it hurts people and makes them feel unloved. So I went back to calling people Stewart. Sometime in 7th grade, we got a home computer and the internet, and I discovered the true meaning of the N-word. I was horrified at my past self and incredibly endeared to Ms. Wilson. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for fostering my empathy and not punishing my ignorance. TLDR, call my 5th grade class the N-word. Story 32, playing mechanic with my female neighbor. We were 5 at the time, and I would get on my back and look up her skirt so I could repair her car. I hope she doesn't remember. Story 33, when I was 3 or 4, I thought my goldfish were unable to sleep because they were always swimming, so I took them out of the fish tank, laid them on my pillow, and tucked them in. Eventually, my mom came in the room and frantically put them back into the water. Out of the 7 or so, roughly half survived. Sorry, fish. Story 34, my brother was really angry at Frogger because he was awful at playing computer games, and he was bouncing in excessive frustration in his chair as he was jumping. I placed a sharp pen under his, but the scream that followed was even sharper than the pen. The pen went 3 inches in his right butt cheek, and he now has a horrible scar. I laughed at him as he cried. Story 35, I would lock my cousin inside the dark basement at his old house in the countryside. I would stand outside the basement door and listen to the laughter from inside. After a while, I would open the door and let in the light. After all these years, I still can't figure out who he thought was wrestling with him. Story 36, I walked into the kitchen after seeing a commercial and asked my mom if my face was the face of erectile dysfunction. Referencing a commercial I had just seen, she told me never to say it again. Story 37, I used to masturbate in public without realizing how disgusting it might have been, like, not on the street or anything, but in the back of a restaurant or on the couch watching TV. I remember the day at school we were told what masturbating was. I remember the exact moment I realized why we were asked to leave from so many different establishments or sent to bed early. Story 38, not too horrible, but hurtful. When I was about 6, I was playing on the floor next to my mom. It struck me suddenly how big her thighs were, and I looked at her and said, "Who, baby, you have some fat thighs." I thought I was being funny, but she looked so sad that I immediately realized I had said something bad. 15 years later, and I still feel bad when I think about it. Story 39, I used to catch dragonflies and then rip off half their wings to tame them. Then I'd stick a blade of grass in their mouths to watch them bite it off. I still feel bad for those poor little guys. 5-year-olds are stupid. Story 40, girls in prep school. Let me look under their skirts. Edit, here is the story. I was told that these group of girls liked me because I was new to the school. I don't really remember, but one thing led to another, and I told them that I was a movie star from out of state. They believed me. At lunch a few times a week, the 4 or 5 girls would take me behind the electrical box shed thing and let me lift up their skirts. I was also in the 5th grade. They were in the 6th. This was a private Catholic school. Never got caught. Story 41, a boy in my neighborhood had a trampoline. I hated him, but I used him for his trampoline. One night his mom owed, so he came to my house. He stayed in my room that night. As I was at my grandmother's, when I returned, I found my Liger Zero disassembled. When I put it back together, I found I was missing pieces, armor, claws, the pilot, the important stuff. So I tried to poison him. Edit, due to popular demand, the formula: half a glass of Coke, bug spray, dish soap, assorted household cleaner, and a single plastic bead for him to choke on. He drank it down, looked me in the eyes, and said that was good. Story 42, in 1st grade, I found naked pictures of my mom hidden in my house. I took them to school and traded them for bubble gum. My dad was not too pleased to have to go to 5 houses in my very small town to retrieve them. Story 43, I wrecked my bicycle into a neighbor's 69 Camaro and left a scratch in it. I bailed out and never said a thing. I still think about it to this day and feel terrible about it. I wish he was still around so I could go confess. Story 44, when I was around the age of 5 to 6, I remember telling a girl that she was inferior because girls don't have penises. Not that horrible, but I still feel bad about it. Story 45, when I was 6 or 7, my brothers told me that when our German exchange student arrived home, I should greet her by saying Heil Hitler. I did because I didn't know who he was. She was not amused. Story 46, my parents used to keep a small tub of Vaseline in their nightstand that I assumed was just meant for chapped lips, so I regularly would walk into their room, scoop some out with my finger, and apply to my unknowing mouth. Story 47, I used to throw things onto the road from nearby bushes. Various objects included pine cones, tin cans, marbles, beer bottles, rocks, etc. If I saw some doing that now, I would pummel him into the ground. Story 48. I laughed hysterically when the second tower fell on 9 to 11 in the middle of class with everyone watching. I was forever known as that kid. Still don't know why I laughed at it. I think it was the general excitement of the moment or something. Even the teachers were gossiping about it. Story 49. When I was 4, one of my preteen friends in the neighborhood smuggled some eggs from a nest. I dropped mine on the sidewalk, exposing a little eye. My preteen friend got me another one, which my mother took away. My best friend put hers under her pillow where it was squashed. Story 50. When I was really little, my mom got me a pair of cheap binoculars. It was nighttime, but I was super excited and wanted to try them out on something, so I spied on my mother taking a shower. Story 51. I stole coins from my grandmother. For a year, I would reach in that jar and take a few coins. Thing is, I would never have been scared to ask for some money to buy candy. If she had not said it was bad for my teeth, I just wanted candy, but I hate what I did back then now. Story 52. Well, when I was a 5th grader, I watched my dad's copy of Die Hard for the first time and learned a new phrase. Thinking it was something adults say all the time, I decided to use it to try to be seen as an adult, so when my new neighbors moved in, my family went to greet them. My mom told me to just say welcome to the neighborhood and nothing else. Trying to be an adult, I say that plus the phrase I learned. Turns out saying welcome to the neighborhood mother wasn't appropriate to say to your new black neighbors. Edit, apparently mentioning a person's race is taboo. Story 53. I was 11 years old. During a holiday, I met this girl, and we kind of liked each other. So this girl and I were playing on a playground, all very innocent. We kind of flirted with each other, flirted how 11-year-olds do. We decided to go on the seesaw. Apparently, I was a bit heavier, so she got stuck up in the air. In all my wisdom, I decided to quickly get off to scare her. She crashed down, broke her arm. I remember the screaming and seeing a bone stick out. I panicked and did what every great guy boy does. I ran, never saw her again. Story 54. My grandmother was helping me put my ski boots on when I was very little, and once they were secure on my feet, I went to stand up. The chair I was on was too tall for me. However, my feet didn't touch the ground. In order to get off, I swung my legs back, then forth. Try to use their momentum to jump of. Fuck, I nailed my grandmother's knees with my ski boots. 10 years and 2 new knees later, she's forgiven me. Story 55. I can't remember if it was a dream or reality. I honestly think I'm trying to pretend it didn't happen. When I was super young, 5 or less, I remember my dad's leg and saying it felt good. I'm a woman, by the way, and I am disgusted with myself to this day. I find nothing about doing that normal. Story 56. There was a bird's nest outside on our porch. We were excited about the eggs inside and watching them hatch and grow. The mama would come and go all throughout the day. She just seemed happy and cheerful. One day the eggs hatch, and we had a whole nest full of ugly little babies, kind of exciting as a kid. One day, soon after, I noticed the mama had not been flitting around like normal, so I went out to peer at the nest. I found a mama dead below the nest. An apparent victim of our cat, though he never fessed up. I felt so bad because it seemed like such a happy family, and now the babies were going to die a slow death from starvation exposure. My father had always taught me the value of ending animal suffering, so I killed all the babies with a shovel. As I finished up a last one, a mama shows up to find all her little babies chopped up around the nest, and some egg yolk from 1 or 2 that hadn't hatched yet. I'm sure it was pretty normal chirping noises it made, but to me it sounded like the agonizing shrieks of 1,000 mothers. It bothered me for a while. Then I went inside to play Nintendo. Story 57. I would find random names in the phone book like Jim and Susie Mitchell and call them, hoping to get an answering machine. When I did get one, I would leave a message like, "Oh, Jim, I had such a lovely time with you last night. Let's do it again soon. Kisses." My 11-year-old self thought it was simply hilarious to with people's lives randomly. I'm a terrible person. Story 58. Time to make myself feel terrible. In the first few years after I joined school, I was relentlessly bullied by the older kids. I'm not sure why they bullied me, but I suspect it was because I never told on them. After a while, I realized that if I bullied kids, the older bullies would leave me alone. I became the worst bully ever and did some horrible things up until the 6th grade. When I was in 2nd grade, a friend and I built a fake bomb out of some old circuitry and a watch. During recess at school, we put it in the school bathroom and played like we were James Bond saving the school. At the end of the day, we went home, but the fake bomb stayed there. The next morning, we were met by a lot of police at the school. The janitor had found the fake bomb overnight, and the bomb squad was promptly dispatched from hundreds of miles away. As a result, we had to meet regularly with a police officer who came to the school, but no charges were ever filed because we meant no harm. During middle school, my brother and I found out that if we switched barcode stickers for expensive items with less expensive items, the item would get scanned at lower prices at stores, and the checkers wouldn't take a second look. We effectively partially stole a lot of video games. I'm sure we also may have messed for people doing inventory later. During middle school and part of high school, I treated my family absolutely horribly. Not all the time, but when I did, I was extremely nasty towards them. I would call my brother names, push him down the stairs, spread rumors about him, etc., etc. Yet we were still best friends. For my parents, I would also call them names. Didn't respond to their punishments. It just made me more angry. And I repeatedly told them I hated them and I wanted them to die. I made my mother cry many times and tried to do it on many occasions. Out of all I've done, this is by far the one I feel the worst about. I didn't realize what kind of impact it actually had on them until years later. In middle school, I was also suspended for 3 weeks after telling the principal I was going to burn down the school, and there was nothing she could do to stop me. I wasn't being serious. I was making a comment in the lunchroom, and everybody else thought it was hilarious. The faculty did not. And finally, the big bang. When I was in high school, I absolutely hated teachers telling me what to do. They would argue with me when I tried to learn more advanced concepts on my own. This pissed me off to no end. I became withdrawn and generally hated everybody and blamed the world for holding me back. So being the stupid teenager I was, what did I do? I loaded up my dad's pickup with guns, gas, oil, and several other unmentioned items. I drove it to the school while class was in session and began to unload the equipment out back. I had made some preparations in and around the school in the days preceding, so I was all set to go. Except while I was walking toward the school, an old man saw me and stopped me. And even though he didn't ever directly acknowledge that he knew what I was doing, he talked to me for a few minutes and snapped me back to reality. He saved my life and many others. That last item above is the last truly horrible act I committed or attempted to commit. Since then, I have been completely refined and try to be a productive member of society. I now have a strong desire to help more than hurt, and I try to see the good in everyone, no matter how up their intentions appear to be. I also feel that a large contributor to all my issues was due to lack of understanding of social authoritative paradigms. Recently, I'm 27 now. I was diagnosed with autism Asperger's in this case, while undergoing treatment for other health issues. During my time of being a teenager, the gravity of the situations didn't really weigh in. Story 59 found a dead mouse in the basement. Being 6 and all, I was totally intrigued and decided to keep it for further investigation. Not want to stink up my room, I kept it in my older brother's sock drawer. I guess I just wasn't the brightest kid. Story 60, I used to treat my best friend like she was so nice to me. We had each other's back. I can honestly say we love each other like siblings. She was so kind and gentle. She came over every single day nonstop for months. 5-year-old me was fed up with it. And at one point I told her to go home. I hit her on the arm. She cried and ran home. I moved when I was 8. We were still friends when I did, but we lost contact. I visited 3 times. She was never home. I told her mom to give her my number. I was 15 now. She was probably 17. Her mom never did because she never called. I wanted to apologize so much for treating her so badly. Then I went back to visit, hoping she was home. She died in a car wreck. She was driving under the influence of alcohol. I never got to grow up with her. Guys, I wonder who she became, who she made friends with. We were kids, man. We were just kids back then. And now she's gone. I can't say how sorry I was. Story 61, my family and I went to the beach when my sister was a toddler and I was 6 or 7. My sister took off down the beach. Full toddler sprint. I watched her leave, weaving through the hordes of people, looked at my parents, waited 5 minutes, looked at my parents again, and in the most unnervingly casual way, my mother. I said, "Sister's gone." They looked back at me with a confused look, then an OH look, then they took off running down the beach after her. She was an escape artist. This happened all the time. The tide was coming in. But I snatched my dad's chair since he took off. I sat there and watched the tide come up and wash all of our stuff away except my chair, including the car keys. I thought it was hilarious. It was hilarious. Bonus, I went to the park with my dad and sister. My dad and I got out of the car and stayed nearby to unload it. My sister ran down the grassy hill full sprint. I watched her run all the way into a pond covered in green scum that she apparently thought was just grass. I watched her flail for a minute or two and turn to my dad and extremely casually say, "Sister's drowning." Another giant face, followed by another OH, and he sprinted down and dove in after her since she couldn't swim. To be fair to me, though, that sister's knuckin' futz. She could escape her crib before she was a year old. Just this last year, she destroyed her elbow doing a backflip on a snowboard. So to take it easy this summer, she's just riding dirt bikes. When I was 5, I hid my parents' shovel in a hole I dug with it to see if it could dig itself out.